Hello, Katrina Bullock for the Finance News Network. Joining me today is famed investor, author and market analyst Jim Rogers. Jim is perhaps most well known for co-founding the Quantum Fund, a fund which gained 4,200% during the 70s, while the S&P advanced only about 47%. Jim, it is so lovely to have you back on the network.
Katrina, I am delighted to be here. It's been a while since I was on FNN. I'm delighted to be back, and especially with you.
Absolute pleasure as always. Now, first up, how do you think the vaccine rollout will impact markets in the Asia-Pacific region?
Well, people will think that the vaccine is going to calm things down and make economies restore themselves. It may well happen, but it's certainly going to take a while. First of all, it's going to take a long time for people to get the vaccine. I live in Singapore, a country with 5.5 million people. It's going to be at least 2 quarters, maybe 3, before everybody gets it here. And we're a small place, so it's going to take a while.
Now, while we're talking about Asia, I know you've invested in Chinese wine stocks, and I have to give you credit because you've been bullish on them for a long time, even before we saw the Chinese government slap Aussie exporters with huge anti-dumping tariffs. Tariffs which I'm sure only serve to increase domestic sales and raise valuations. So do you think it's still a good time to invest in Chinese wine stocks, or have investors missed the boat?
Well, they've certainly started going up for some reason, and I presume that the tariffs on Australian wine is part of the reason. But no, Katrina, most people don't know there are Chinese wine stocks, and eventually I hope everybody knows there are Chinese wine stocks, and then I will sell. But no, as far as I can see, they got a long way to go.
I know you have a bullish outlook on commodities as well, silver, agriculture, oil, and now energy. So what's the rationale behind your optimism?
Katrina, as I look around the world, most asset stocks in many parts of the world are either at all-time highs or very, very strong. In Japan, they're at the highest they've been in 31 years. So stocks are going up. Bonds are certainly in a bubble. Bonds have never been this high in the history of the world. Property in many places is very strong. Seoul, London, many places. So that's a bubble. But sugar's down 75% from its all-time high. Silver's down 40%, 45%. These things are not overpriced and certainly possibly very cheap.
Now, Jim, you mentioned recently that you're limiting your exposure to bonds because you believe they may be in a bubble. I'd love to hear a bit more about that. Firstly, what type of bonds are we talking about? Is it US Treasury bonds, Aussie government bonds, corporate bonds, all of the above? And why do you think a bubble is occurring?
Nearly all bonds. In fact, I cannot think of any bonds that are not in a bubble. The Treasury bonds in the US are the lowest they've been in history. In Japan, they're negative interest rates. Parts of Europe, they're negative interest rates. Even in China, China still has interest rates, but they're the lowest they've ever been. So, it's pretty simple to me. When things are the lowest they've ever been in the history of the world, that's usually a bubble. Now you can, in even junk bonds, the spreads between high quality and low quality is the lowest ever. People are desperate to buy yield, and they're paying any price for it. Now there's some bonds that are better price. Russian government bonds in rubles still have yield, but they're very expensive on a historic basis.
Now, just yesterday, the US Democrats secured the balance of power in the US Senate. We're heading into 2021 with the rollout of the COVID vaccine. We have President-elect Joe Biden who'll take office in just a fortnight. So with all that in mind, how do you think the US share market will perform in the year ahead?
Well, I suspect that it will go up for a while because Mr. Biden and all of his friends love to spend money, love to print money, love to borrow money, and the market's like that, obviously everywhere. And the same is happening Japan, everywhere, Korea, Europe, everywhere. They're all borrowing and spending and printing a lot of money, and markets like that, at least for a while. Karina, if you give me $10 trillion, I'll show you a very, very good time. Now, we'll have a very good time for a while, but eventually somebody's going to wake up and say, oh, what about all this debt? What do we do now? But that's not this month, that's later.
Now, I was reading an article last night where you projected that the next bear market will likely be the worst in at least 78 years. Why?
Well, Katrina, what I said was that the next bear market is going to be the worst in my lifetime. And that's pretty simple. You know, we had a bad problem in 2008 all over the world because the debt everywhere was too high. Katrina, since then, the debt all over the world has skyrocketed. You know, the US is every month trillions we've been adding. Even China now. China didn't have much debt 20 years ago, but now even the Chinese have a lot of debt. So the next time around, it's got to be the worst in my lifetime. It's pretty simple. Now we have bear markets every few years, we always have, and economic problems every few years, we always will. I will have to hasten to tell you that the new Treasury Secretary in the US says, no, 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 we'll never have problems again. So if you believe her, her name is Janet Yellen. She has degrees from fancy Ivy League universities. If you believe her, then don't listen to me. But I suggest to you that we will have more economic problems in the future. I don't know when, watch FNM, but when we do, it's going to be horrible because the debt everywhere. I mean, Katrina, Japan, it is unbelievable what they're doing in Japan, how much they're borrowing and spending and printing. I mean, I own Japanese ETFs because the Bank of Japan, he goes to work every day, prints money as fast as he can, and buys ETFs and stocks and bonds. Well, Katrina, he has more money than I do. If he's going to buy Japanese ETFs, I am too. So, I mean, this sort of thing is happening. It's madness. It's great for the moment. But Katrina, when the problems come back, it's gonna, Katrina, I'm older than you, so it's gonna be the worst in your lifetime too. It's not going to be fun, cannot be.
Recently, US President Donald Trump accused Switzerland, China, and Vietnam of manipulating their currencies. What's your comment on that and the impact of currency manipulation on the global economy?
Throughout history, when there are problems in a country, the politicians always blame foreigners. It's very easy to blame foreigners. They have different skin, different language, different food, different dress, different religion, different everything. And so in Washington, they're blaming foreigners again. Mr. Trump would never say he made a mistake. Mr. Trump is the smartest president we've ever had in the history of the United States and in the history of Australia, in the history of everywhere. So that is what's going on. Now, yes, he and the new guys will do the same thing. They will blame currency manipulation. There is no question that every government in the world, including Australia, is printing a lot of money right now. So, and then the US. If anybody's manipulating their currency, it's the United States, because we're printing more than, well, not more than Japan, but more than nearly anybody, and so are the Swiss. So when he starts blaming other people, it's just the typical politician trying to get reelected. Maybe the Vietnamese are manipulating their currency. If so, not in a big way that I can see anyway. Likewise, the Chinese. The Chinese have let their currency float to some extent. Nobody has a free currency like well, Australia does, a few places do, but most countries do try to control their currency, which is insane if you ask me. But as far as Mr. Trump, that's really just blaming other people for our problems being the US. And the direct answer to your question is if you print a lot of money, it affects financial markets. That was your specific question, but everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it.
And lastly, Jim, what tips do you have for Aussie investors to help them get ahead as we move into 2021?
Well, first I would say to any investor, only invest in what you yourself know a lot about. Don't listen to somebody you see on the TV or on the internet, unless it's Katrina maybe or FNM. Yeah, you can listen to Katrina, but don't listen to me or other people. If you want to be successful, invest only in what you yourself know a lot about. Now, I know you're going to say, no, that's boring. I want a hot tip. I want to be rich this week. Well, hot tips will send you to the poorhouse. Hot tips will ruin you. So just stay with what you want. Everybody watching this, Katrina, knows a lot about something, whether it's sports or cars or fashion or something. So just stay with what you know. And when you see something that's going to work and you know it's going to work, do some research and maybe make an investment. And then, by the way, you can send me an email too. And then I'll do my research to find out about it.
Jim Rogers, thank you so much for your time and insights today. Really, really appreciate them.
Thank you, Katrina. It's my pleasure. Watch FNN and tell me when the next bear market starts, okay? Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much, Jim. That was wonderful.